Guys, I'm editing the video with my good friend Kevin Haley. It's gonna come out. Well, it already came out if you're watching this. But he's a longtime friend from middle school. He plays for Saddleback Church, and we have some friends in common. So I hope you guys like this podcast. We're gonna be talking about imposter syndrome, about growing closer to Christ after a loss. Do you guys hear that? That's my computer. Anyway, I hope you guys like this episode and enjoy. Okay, guys. Welcome back to the YouTube channel, Living for Christ podcast. Today, I have my first guest.
Hey, I'm Kevin. That was so awkward.
Okay, we're gonna keep it
in.
Kevin Haley, and we're gonna be doing some questions as well as this henna art. I'm not the best at art, but we're gonna try. He shaved.
Yeah. I have no idea, for the record, how this came to be or why I agreed to it, but I'm trusting in you.
He's gonna play tomorrow at church.
Yeah.
So he's trying to cover it up.
Yeah. The difference.
Okay. So we did pray before. Well, I prayed beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and do that then. We're gonna have to cut it.
No.
Because we're just like randomly talking right now. You're gonna leave this random conversation.
Yeah, I am. This is organic. I prayed beforehand. But
yeah.
Wanna? Or...
Yeah, sure.
We're not gonna cut it though.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you have given us. Thank you for letting us be here today. And I ask that you let whatever we talk about be inspired by you. And in your name we pray. Amen.
Man, that's literally what I said in the car.
Really?
I kid you not. Like, I was in the car, I'm like, let every word that we say be inspired by you. And then I caught myself, I'm like, let it be only what you want. I literally said that. And it was such a short prayer.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy.
High five.
Okay.
We're on the same wavelength.
Okay, let's start.
The chaos.
Wait, okay.
Smells good.
Okay, so do you want to start us off? Okay.
Yeah. I guess.
I'm laughing because I'm nervous, I'm sorry. Okay.
A little context to our friendship. We met in middle school. Didn't see each other for how many years? A lot. And then we randomly ran into each other because another mutual friend of ours invited me to her church event, and you happened to be there. And yeah, that's the background on how we've kind of rekindled over the years. Dude, I have no idea what you're doing, but we're gonna roll with it. I can't believe I agreed to this.
I'm laughing because I'm nervous. I'm so sorry. Just keep talking. Don't pay attention.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna erase anything.
Okay. And yeah, I guess that's the background of our friendship. As you can see, it's pretty chaotic. I feel like we've gotten along just because I'm kind of like the let it ride kind of person, and you're the quirky, like chaotic. You have ideas like this, and it's been a wild ride. But I'm really happy that we've been able to reconnect over the past year or something, that we ran into each other again like a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so before coming to the event, like, did you know that I was gonna be there?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I did.
And what was I doing? Was I singing?
Yeah, you were doing worship that night.
So how did you recognize me? Like, were you like, oh, like, I recognize this girl, or Ashley told you?
Oh, because you sort of look familiar, and then Ashley was like, hey, do you remember Ashley Torres? And I was like, yes, I do remember her. And I was just like, a bunch of memories that I didn't know that I still had just kind of came back, and those like funny talks that we'd have during lunch or whatever in middle school with
Adan?
Yeah, Adan, and I think it was like Stephanie and Chris that would hang out with us too.
Oh yeah, Stephanie. I forgot about Stephanie.
Yeah, and it's just like it's funny how things work out where you run into someone after so long of not, seeing them or whatever.
I think I didn't recognize you because like your hair and you were like much like your build was different.
Yeah, way different.
Like you were like smaller in nature. And then you like grew.
Yeah.
Height wise too.
Yeah, I used to be like 5'6" in middle school, or like 5'5". Yeah. What topic did you want to start off with?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to okay, so this is what I have so far actually.
Okay. It's not that crooked.
Like I wanted to touch the point about like how, you know, God works in like mysterious ways. And in middle school, I didn't know you were Christian. I didn't know Ashley Reyes was Christian.
And yeah, that's I guess like our conversations never really got there, right? But for context, I grew up in the church, Pentecostal, and now I go to Saddleback Church, but I still help out in the church where I've been going since a kid. I do kids ministry on Thursday nights with middle schoolers. At Saddleback, I do worship team, and I feel like music has become a really big part of my life, and it kind of always has. Like I've been playing music since elementary, but it's like church has always been a big part of my life, and I'm honestly surprised that, or I feel like I had mentioned it to you guys at some point, because it's something that everyone knew, that like I was always busy with church, but yeah, I'm surprised that it never came up with us in middle school, or like if it did, maybe it was just like in passing, right?
Yeah, it was never like a big thing.
Yeah.
All I remember was, I think the only one that I knew was Christian, or his family was Christian, was a Dan. So when I found out that Ashley Reyes and you, oh heck no, when you and Ashley Reyes were Christian, I was like, how come you guys never brought that up? Like I was just so weirded out that like my true friends were all Christian.
Yeah, and at the time, remind me, did you go to a Christian church at the time, or no? You were Catholic at the time, right?
I was Catholic, just barely like going into Christianity.
Yeah, I do remember you mentioning that. And like I think Catholicism is it's very different from Christianity in the sense, like I've gone to Catholic church and it feels like a different vibe.
Yeah.
How was it for you, like transferring over into your Pentecostal church growing up Catholic?
Well, I remember like I always say this to people when I'm evangelizing, but we do worship the same God. It's just different practices. So I remember when I used to go to a Catholic church, we would just go out of tradition. Like we'd be like, okay, well our family's Catholic, so we're gonna go because our family. It was very much like a tradition thing. And I would go, and I remember just being there. You're like, look at it.
Yeah.
Just being there, and just like wanting to go to the buffet.
After service, yeah.
Yeah, because it was always very much like, okay, once the service is over, we're gonna go eat. And then so that was that. I did my first communion there, and I remember I was in second grade, and they asked me to read like the creed, like the Credo. And I don't know how I read that. I can't do it now, but I have like a video of it if I find it.
Got you. Put it in.
And the reason why we actually came, we converted into Christianity was because my older sister, she was a very rebellious child, and my stepmom, she literally didn't know what to do with her. So it came to the point where one of her Herbalife homies like evangelized her at one of those Herbalife meetings, and she was like, look, I know you're struggling with the family right now with your stepdaughter, but if you bring her to church and you guys come to church, like God will give you, you know, the solution to that. And so it was because of that we started going with my stepmom. And I didn't know this, but my dad used to be a Christian.
Oh, really?
I didn't know this. Yeah. So like he used to be a Christian, but from what he told us years after was his mom used to shove the religion down his throat and would make him memorize stuff, and if he didn't memorize like the verses, she would like hit him.
Gotcha.
Because obviously they come from a very Hispanic background.
Yeah.
So I remember I was like 15 or 16 when I found this out, and I was like, how come you never told us you were Christian? Like, it was like a family secret that I was like,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we converted.
Okay.
And you guys, you've always been a Christian?
Yeah, pretty much since I can remember. I pretty much, like I said, grew up in the church. We were going to a different Christian church before we started going to TC in Santa Ana.
Mm-hmm.
We started going to that church when I was, I want to say like 5.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, like, we started going to that one because a family friend invited us to check out her church, and we ended up really liking it. And I feel like even though I was 5 when I started going there, I've been there pretty much most of my life, and I feel like I grew up in that church essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Because a majority of my childhood was spent there, and I've made good friends, and I attribute a lot of my faith to my mom. Like, she's been always the person who, she's always like taught us how to lead in prayer, how to like stay faithful, and it's helpful to have that example from her of someone that's so faithful to God. Like, she set that example in us young, and I really attribute a lot of myself to her and her faithfulness. Like, she was the example for me and my brother, on how, like, what a godly mom looks like, and like what I want to strive to be essentially with my faith.
Is it it's chill?
Yeah, it's chill. It should still be recording.
Okay.
For context, the screen behind us turned off. But yeah, like, that's kind of my background with it. And I've been in ministry for as long as I can remember. I grew up in, shout out to Royal Rangers, I grew up in that ministry. It's like Boy Scouts, but through the Christian church. And now that I'm an adult, I help out in the ministry. And even though I don't attend that church on Sundays anymore, I still go back and volunteer with the ministry. And it gave me a lot of opportunities that I never thought I'd have as a younger kid, with being able to travel and, go out to these cool events in other states and go camping, experience different things. And it's unreal how those experiences are, and like how close you come to God at some of those camps, like with retreats and stuff like that. It's really powerful.
Wait, how old did you say you were?
When I started going to that one specifically?
Yeah, like when you had like a strong encounter.
I want to say it was around like 5 years old.
That's young.
6 years old, yeah. I remember my childhood pastor. He, I want to say when I was 12, the church that we went to wouldn't let kids get baptized, but he had a meeting with me and my mom when I was, I want to say later on when I was 10, and he was like, I think your son, he, like, I would like for him to get baptized. And it's something that we typically don't do at this church, but, like, he has displayed to me that he has like a strong walk, and I feel like it's something that he's ready to do. And I attribute stuff like that a lot to my mom. Like I said, like, her example of what a godly person should be has always been what I strive to be. Yeah. And I think that's important to have growing up in a Christian household, or like growing up with someone who is so strong in their faith makes it a lot easier to stay strong within your own faith. Yeah. And
like iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, definitely. And she's always kind of been I want to say like the positive source in my life. I'm naturally I'm a glass half empty kind of person to a fault sometimes,
Mm.
where I like I put myself down and I'll let like imposter syndrome take over, and she always sees the good in the other side. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
That's what I wanted to talk about
Mhm.
imposter syndrome. If we can get into that, because when I see, like, if you guys just see Kevin for Kevin, like on his Instagram, he has like 1,000 hobbies, always hiking, using his bike to go on hike, like, you know, bike trails and all this stuff. And he's a professional photographer, and I see all this. You have your degree, you work in accounting. Like, from the outside, you look like you have everything going for you, and I'm like, dang, like I strive to be like Kevin because he's so like driven. But you have shared with me about like your imposter syndrome, and I think that's something that we both have in common. If you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I guess like it's one of those things where you accomplish things in your life, but I've always felt like I didn't accomplish it, right? It's that feeling of I don't deserve to be glad about finishing this because I didn't put in the effort to get it, or like it's that why me. And I think it's important to remember that God put you in a position to do something because it was part of his plan, right? We don't do things out of our own doing. Everything is through the power of God. And that's something that I've really had to change my mentality towards, to realize like it's I shouldn't feel um I shouldn't feel a certain way about it, because at the end of the day it's like I didn't accomplish this on my own accord, and I shouldn't be ashamed of accomplishing something, or I shouldn't be embarrassed about accomplishing something because it was part of his plan.
Yeah. Wait, a quick moment to see the piece. You want to see it? Oh,
Yeah, just like take a picture of it and show me, because like
I'm not done, but it's like getting there.
okay, a little bit crooked, but it's not bad.
I was looking so far.
Yeah, it's getting there.
And then when it dries up, it's actually gonna be better because look,
right.
I got a little bit on me.
Uh-huh.
And it like dried up so
right.
fast. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that, and I also wanted to talk about, because I feel like that's something that us creatives and people who are like, you know, trying their hardest to follow Jesus, to run after Jesus, like we just suffer so much from imposter syndrome. Like we do so much for the Lord, and we have to remember like it's not by works that we're saved. It's not by works that the Lord loves us even more.
Mm-hmm.
But and mostly like a single season. Like I feel like you know, like I'm recently single, and then you've been single for how long?
A while.
Yeah. So I think just like finding hobbies and stuff to be like obviously making God your priority and doing that. Mm-hmm. Like how do you navigate being single, following Christ, and like, you know?
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things where it's difficult sometimes to be like things are in God's time, right? Because I think naturally we want to do things to our own accord and to our own will, but ultimately you can't rush his time. And it's over the years I've tried to become more selective on who I pursue, and it's led to, you know, meeting people that I think are great but ultimately don't work out with because their faith isn't on a level that I'd like. In the sense of we have very different views of what we want spiritually, and I've kind of come to the conclusion where I'd like to meet someone who's going to strengthen my walk and not, you know,
make you fall back.
Yeah, and it's like I don't want to say that a person can make you fall, but they can.
They can.
Yeah, and it's not. I think you also can't blame the other person completely. Like, you can't put fault on anyone other than yourself for the actions that you commit.
Yeah.
But it's so important to realize, like you said earlier, iron sharpens iron. So I'd like to
And bad company
meet someone.
corrupts, you know.
Yeah.
Bad company does corrupt. I think about when Adam and Eve were in the garden, and there's a verse that stood out to me where it said that, like basically it was saying that the woman has the ability to deceive or coerce her husband into doing something. So while the husband's job is to protect and to provide, the woman has the ability to lead her husband like astray to like a wrong decision or like the right decision. So I feel like mostly like you're saying like, okay, if I find a partner, it has to be the right person, because the wrong person can lead me to do stuff that's not like the right thing.
Yeah, essentially. And I think it's like it's important to think about. And you know, it was a lot different when we're younger, where it's like you're going through that phase in high school where everyone around you is with someone and you just want to be with someone. But now I see it as like we're at that age like where we really got to start considering not just the now but the future, right? Like you like dating with a purpose, I guess. Wanting more than just someone to pass the time with, and someone that you're in it with for the long haul. And I think I've just started to consider things a lot more, especially with like recent, you know, like I told you about some stuff off camera that just didn't work out.
I want to mention it so bad, but I don't, because it's going to be so obvious if I say what it is. If the person ever watches this.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just like things that didn't work out. Yeah. And
then also, okay, so we were talking about, shout out
your art.
We were talking about how the book and the movie The Shack depicts God as not just Abba Father as a male, but as an African American woman, and how that really like changed my view of how I see God, because God isn't just a male. Like, yes, he is the authority, he is you know, like the Godhead. We talk about that, like God is the ultimate authority, and we see him as a father, but there was just something so powerful about how like God can literally show up as anything. Like he could choose to be whatever form, and then that led us to having a conversation about a film that you watched on Netflix.
Well, the film was like a different thing. Yeah, but
if you want to tap into that first thing and then the film.
Yeah, I think when you mentioned that, we were kind of talking about, we brought it back to like Moses and the burning bush, right? How God presented himself. And I think it's like the gist of it is essentially like God's presence is going to appear to you in a way that is impactful for you. And I feel like at one point or another we're going to feel God's presence and kind of like look for that calling that he has for us. Like, and it's just being patient about when you feel that presence. On the other topic, it's like the movie isn't necessarily connected with Christianity or anything, but I was talking about how when I watched a movie called I'm Thinking of Ending Things, the whole movie is like this guy, the movie is in the perspective of like the girl going out with this guy to meet his family, and it's just like weird. And essentially the end of the movie is like him dying, but this whole scenario of like him imagining his life with this girl that he never had the courage to talk to. And it's like that, like what I got from it was essentially letting fear dictate what steps you take in your life. And I tend to be a more calculated person, I would say. Like someone that doesn't necessarily take risk with his life, and to a fault sometimes. It's like you need to be willing to step out and not be afraid to let things go sour, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like if God is calling you to do something, he's not going to let you fail to do what he wants to do. And I guess like that's kind of how I tied it into that movie, where it was like the guy, like he was afraid of talking to her, never approached her, whatever. And it was like the thing that it made me think about was like fear, the fear to be outgoing, or like the fear to do something new, whatever it may be, right? Like we all have something that we're called to, and yeah, we can't let fear dictate us. And I think it's something that I tend to let kind of dictate me. I'm a person who doesn't take a lot of risk, but which is ironic for a person who loves like action sports and stuff like that, where I'm constantly putting myself in risk, right? But that's like a different kind of risk, I'd say.
I think it's because you're like very mellow and stuff. Like you're very
Sure, yeah.
like calm, but like he's always down for anything. Like
Yeah.
like anything. Like you're like, hey, let's try surfing. Like we're like, okay, let's go do it Saturday, or let's go hiking. He's like, okay, let me check my sketch. Yeah, let's go do it.
Yeah, and it's that like weird that weird thing where I like being spontaneous, but with big things I like, oh okay, it works. It's actually better than I thought it was gonna come out. Good job.
That was such a like a teacher to a toddler moment. Good job.
Yeah. Can you tell I work with kids? I volunteer with kids, middle schoolers. But yeah, like I have that weird spontaneous side to me, but I'm also at the same time like really calculated. Like it's a weird mix to my personality, and I don't necessarily understand it, but I think it's just like I'm more spontaneous with things that are short term, like last week you just being randomly like, hey, what are you doing, like you called me and I was like, okay, let's go. Because those things I know are short term, it's like a thing, but if you
low risk.
Yeah, low risk.
I can say no, I can say yes.
Yeah. But when it's like something long term, I really have to like outweigh, like I calculate everything. I really research things, and it's like sometimes you kind of got to take the plunge in, right? And it's something that I'd like to get better at. But yeah, it's all about when God is calling you to do something, to bring everything full circle. When he's calling you to do something, you got to go into it knowing that he's going to guide you through it. There was a song, and I can't remember the title, but there's a part in the song that goes, why are you kneeling, my son? I put strength in that backbone, knowing that you would fall, but I promise that you'll never taste defeat. And it's essentially
so
like
good.
it's essentially saying like, I know that you're not going to be perfect, and I know that there's going to be hardship, but did I not tell you that you will never face defeat? Like, and I think it's so powerful, and it's something that I'd love to get better at. Like, that's just good. Trusting him at every moment, and not just when I remember, like that, having that faith so strong that anything, it's like, yeah, let's do it.
And like to put a Bible verse to that one, I know it in Spanish, but basically it's like mil caerán a tu diestra y 100,000 a tu diestra, something like that. Forgot the words, but it's like pero a ti no llegarán. So it's like hundreds will fall at your left, and then 1,000, 10,000 will fall at your right, but none of it will get to you. And it's also like no weapon formed against you will prosper. So it's kind of like there's so many verses, like the righteous person will fall 7 times, and 7 times he'll get back up. Like that where you're talking about. But to bring it again back full circle, just like about the whole like depicting God as
oh yeah. So it's I feel like we put God, like we try to put a face to God, because it's our natural human condition to want to put a face to someone or put a face to something, but we have to realize that like he's a lot higher than anything we could imagine, right? And he's gonna appear to us when it's his time. And when that time does come, it's like we got to realize, like an example I used when we were talking off camera was when God appeared to Moses in the burning bush.
Yeah.
And it's essentially that question of what's the burning bush for us, right? Like, how is God gonna call us? And it's something that we need to be actively looking out for. And that's something that I've like tried without my walk. It's always been, what do you want me to do? Not what do I want to do out of my free will, despite having free will.
And I want to talk now about Kevin and about how, like, why I invited him on the pod. Like, besides the fact that he is a really good friend, like a long time friend, and we reconnected after all these years. We actually had asked Kevin to be part of our, like, to help us out with the guitar because he plays guitar, and he plays at which Saddleback location?
Anaheim.
Anaheim. Have you been to the big one yet?
Yeah, I've been at the big one. I started going to the big one before going to Anaheim. It was just too far of a drive to make every Sunday.
Where is it? Rancho?
It's Lake Forest.
Okay, so yeah, so we're Rick Warren, right? That's Rick Warren.
Yeah, right now it's Pastor Andy Wood.
Okay, Andy Wood. But before it was Pastor Rick Warren. For those of you guys that know, he did that one famous book. What was it called? Purpose Driven Life. And something that really stuck out to me about Rick Warren, which is why I like the denomination and everything, was when he was talking about the tithing, this was like years ago. He was saying how usually the Bible just asks for 10%, which is what, in Malachi 3:10 talks about that. But Rick Warren in an interview said, I don't give 10%, I don't give 20%, I don't give 30%. I give as much as I can, which I think at that time was like 80 or 90%. Because he didn't believe in keeping all that wealth for himself, even though he was so wealthy from all the books that he sold and how popular the church is. Like, if you guys ever go to Saddleback, it's a pretty big campus. Yeah, it's a pretty big campus. And people, I'm pretty sure, like, tithe faithfully, and the people that serve, because they just believe in that, like, if you sow, you will reap. But I really like that about him, because even though I feel like he might not give the same percentage now, I really liked that you shouldn't limit yourself to just 10%. Like, that's just like the bare minimum. Like, you give out of the abundance of your heart. And oh no, God has blessed us to be a blessing. So I really like that about him. And like, we were talking about this earlier, actually, how like I've been getting some opportunities. I'm not gonna say the name of the churches, but I've been getting some opportunities with the ministry that the Lord has called me in, with some bigger named churches. And sometimes, like, I mentioned this to Kevin, and he said something so wise. He was like, while it's good that you are getting invited to all these like bigger named churches and denominations, he's like, I think it would be a wise idea to research the churches, right?
Yeah, well, not just the church, but the ministry that you're going into, and see how it aligns with your calling in a way.
Because I was like, dang, that's really good. Because sometimes we just walk into things and we think that it's like from God and it's a blessing because it's something big. But in reality, I think there's like a season for everything. And there's this girl, her name is Bella Cordero. I think she's married now, so Bella Fabrizio. She was with Elevation Worship. And you could tell that she was just starting like to become integrated more into Elevation Worship, and she was going to become one of the main ones. But when she got married, the Lord had asked her to move from North Carolina to California. And it's kind of like, Lord, but Elevation Worship is like huge.
Yeah.
In the worship sense, like in CCM, like that's like the number one. And so I've seen, like, just through her journey that she's posted with her husband, like, God has honored her in like stepping down from over there and coming over here. Not because her views changed or anything, but just because we're stepping down from like a huge name, or like we want to follow just a name. Like, it's not about names, it's about you both can be Pentecostal, but maybe one denomination doesn't believe fully in the speaking of tongues, or in dancing to the Lord with all your might, or like you should really like research stuff before you get into it and think that it's from God. Maybe sometimes it's just a test to see where your heart really is.
And that's where I think like really knowing the Word of God on your own comes in, because Because at the end of the day, it's your walk, right? You're responsible for connecting with God. And I one thing that's important to remember is the difference between a religion and a relationship. Like, as Christians, we're called to have a relationship with God. We're not called to worship a religion in the sense that you just go on Sunday, you memorize things, you go home and forget about everything, right? Like, you're actively building your relationship with Christ. How do you build it? You're building it through prayer, talking to Him, learning about who He is through reading, and it's like building that friendship. And it's, how can you have a friendship with someone if you don't know who they are? And
wow,
yeah, like you need to build that relationship. He tells you who He is, and He tells you what He wants for you, and what He's done for you. But you need to actively be reading and praying, talking to Him. And I think that's something that we forget as Christians sometimes, the importance of it. Because at the beginning, and I feel like especially for kids and like high schoolers and stuff, reading, at least for me, I'm not a big book person. I've gotten into it as I get older, like books and stuff and reading. But like when they tell you as a little kid, oh, you got to read the Bible and stuff, like it can be hard because it's a big daunting book and you don't know where to start. And it's like, just start small with devotionals, or it doesn't need to be
the Bible
the
app
entire
devotionals.
you don't need to read the whole book in one sitting. But yeah, it's all about building that relationship, and I think that's what it's all about. You grow your faith through your friendship with Him.
Yeah, that's good. And like talking about that too, there's been times where I do read my Bible, and in my humanity, I'm like, I feel like this is what the Lord is asking me to do. But I catch myself every time when it comes out. It's like I feel like, so I catch myself and I'm like, okay, let me take it back to the Bible. What is God saying? And there's been a few times where I've been completely wrong. I've been completely wrong, but in my feelings, I felt like I was right. And so, like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but like, let's just take it like a really popular one. Like, a lot of people say, if you can't make a decision, trust your gut. I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Or trust your heart. But biblically speaking, that is so incorrect. Like, the Bible says, your heart is the most deceitful thing. You shouldn't trust your heart. And like in the secular world, that's what everybody preaches. Like, if you love someone, like, follow your heart. The heart wants what it wants. But biblically speaking, the heart is the most deceitful thing, because it's run by emotions. And emotions, even though they're not bad, they make us stray into sometimes things that the Lord doesn't want for us.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. And I think it leads back to, I guess, kind of how we started everything with doing like that imposter syndrome, if whatever you want to call it, right? Of being like, okay, this happened, blah, blah, blah. I didn't accomplish it. We got to remember like that we're not doing things out of our own validation. We're doing things for God. It's actually like Philippians. I have the verse up on my wall when you walk out, but it's like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And it's like, you're like this whole theme of, you're not doing things out of your own validation. You're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for God. So everything that you do it as if you're doing it for God. And it talks about it in the Bible. You're doing it for God and not for another man.
Yeah, and I think mostly, okay, thank you for touching that point, because I go to a school which has a lot of like majors regarding like the Bible. Like, we have a Bible major, we have a worship arts and media major, we have psychology, business, and all this stuff, but all of them have to have like a minor in Bible. So being around a lot of creatives, like a lot of singers, sometimes it's very hard to not compare yourself, because everybody has like a different tone of singing. Some people are more ahead of you in their calling. Some people are like 19, some people are 25. Like, so I'm more on the like what is it called, like the more experienced side, because I've been worship leading for about 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And not just like background choir, but like actually like in the front worship leading, versus some people have only been worship leading for like 1 year or stuff like that. And so I have noticed that people like compare themselves, like even though they have a beautiful voice, it's very much like, oh well, she's gotten more opportunities than me, so she must be better than me. Or on my end too, where it's like, oh, they're so young and they're already way ahead than where I was when I started my ministry. And so usually I don't focus on that, but there have been times where I've had those thoughts, and every time that I have those thoughts, I think of that commandment where it says do not covet, do not crave what somebody else has or want what somebody else has, because you're walking in different timelines. Like maybe this person got their bachelor's degree at 20 and you're graduating in 2 more years and you're like 26 or something. But like that comparison, what you were saying, because of my ADHD brain, when imposter syndrome hits, we have to remember like our value and what we do is not for us, because we're never gonna be fulfilled if we're doing it for us to get accolades, to get people to tell us, oh, you're doing such a great job. But it's like, I'm doing this for Christ and I get my worth from Christ, and that's why like I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Like it's all from him, for him. And the only reason why we've gotten this far, which I think, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, like it's nothing, but you know, you with your talent with the guitar and other instruments, and like where you're serving, and like the doors that God has opened for me in all these places, I think it just goes back to like imposter syndrome. It's gonna be not impossible to skip over, but when it does come, remind yourself it was never meant to be about us. We're simply just vessels and instruments that the Lord in his great mighty love chose to give us like a talent for music.
Yeah, and I'm pretty guilty of being like that sometimes, like feeling like I'm not deserving of being in the position that I'm at. When I first started playing Saddleback, to this day, I still play for a ministry called Celebrate Recovery. And I honestly love serving in the ministry. It's a lot of people who have hurts, habits, and hangups. That's essentially what the slogan, if you want to say it like that, is. And we're playing every Monday night to a group of people who have been hurt in some sort of way, whether it be by addiction, by relationships, or they just need God's presence in their life. And there's something so powerful about being part of a worship team in an environment where these people are willingly coming to God to find help for whatever they're dealing with in their life. And at the beginning of playing, I felt like a lackluster musician within the group. The people that I play with are amazing. They just have it down. And I was like, I'm not at this level where these people are. And honestly, like, sometimes I still feel like that, where I'm like, man, I'm not deserving to be playing with these awesome musicians. And something that I had to come around to was, it's not about you. It's not about where you're at. It's about what God called you to do. And he put you in this position not because you're an amazing or a bad musician or whatever it is. It's because he wants you to use what he gave you to honor him. Yeah. And it's like that. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter where I'm at with my skill level. Yeah. He put you there because he called you to do it, and you're using it to, like essentially, yeah, you're glorifying him. Yeah. I don't know where I was going with this, but I think that was like the major,
that you have felt yourself like thinking that like, hey, like I don't deserve to play with these people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think mostly from a musician standpoint, like there's so much comparison because instruments can be played in so many different styles and so many different ways that you're just like versus like in a vocal like stance, it's pretty easy to tell like, oh, you're off pitch or you're not off pitch, or you're good or you're not good, or like I like your tone or I don't like your tone. And so I think, I don't know, it is different in that aspect, but it's still the same principle though, like the imposter syndrome and stuff. Our ADHD brains are acting up. There was another thing that I wanted to talk about. What was it? This is all organic.
Yeah.
Talk. Oh, you can move your hand, by the way.
Oh yeah. I was just like in a position where, but yeah. I don't know. I guess like I'm curious to know about what has your like walk been like ever since you really like how long did it take for you from going to a Catholic church to going to a Christian church before you really set out like this is my calling, I'm gonna be faithful and I'm gonna leave it all for him? Because what I really admire about you is like everything that you post about like your life, you're living it out like for God, and you seem like you're really you just seem so faithful to him, and I honestly admire that a lot about you. And I'm curious to know like what was that moment for you where you kind of told yourself like I'm gonna lay it all down for him and follow him? Like what was it like?
Yeah, that's good. Well, first off, the very first time I heard God's voice was I've shared this before in a testimony where remember the Smule app?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like a karaoke app.
Yeah.
So I remember I was like 14, and I was like sitting in my room on my iPad, and I remember I was singing like a CeeLo Green song that goes, "I see you driving around town," and I thought I killed that.
Yeah. I
thought I ate that up with the runs and everything.
Okay.
I played it back. It was so bad. I got secondhand embarrassment. Embarrassment and secondhand embarrassment.
Okay.
And I was like, yo, like this can't get out. And then I felt like just like a voice. It was peaceful. That said, don't worry. In a few years, you'll be able to do this and more. And I was like, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
That wasn't me. So I was like, okay. And I just had this faith that I was like, okay. Like I believed it. But as I was, we went back into the faith with my dad. He was a Christian and then he left the faith and then came back to it when I was like around 16. He asked us to join a church as a family, and this church was so small. It only had like the pastoral family, our family, and like 3 to 4 other congregants.
Oh wow.
So they had asked my dad to join the worship team. He played the bass. They had asked my stepmom to be a worship leader, and they had asked me to play the drums. So I was on the drums for like 6 months.
Right.
Oh, it was not good. And so I remember this church, while it taught me a lot, I just left that church very church hurt. Very church hurt. And just because I think it was a very legalistic type of church. And I remember so much had happened. I can't go into details, but so much had happened to the point where I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I left a church that I was very happy in to move to this one where I just don't fit in. I feel like every time I come here, I either leave crying or I feel like I'm just always told something. Like my skirt is too short, or the color that I wore was wrong, or the way that I taught my dance team was wrong. Like everything was met with like criticism. So my view of Christ was very much like, I always knew God was good, but the way that the people were treating me that were in leadership was very like incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
So that made me tell God, like, what do you want from me?
Right.
Like, what do you want from me? Like, why do you have me here? People talk about you like you're a great being, and I believe it. I believe that you are love, you're all of this, but I just haven't had an experience with you. And I had prayed from 12 to 16 for God to have an experience with me, and he just wouldn't meet me. And so I know what it's like to want to have an encounter with God and not receive it for 4 years. So I felt a nudge in my spirit where it was like, well, have you really tried seeking me with all of your mind, body, and soul? And I was like, no, how do I do that? Because I thought I could just pray.
Yeah.
And God was like, how about you fast? And I fasted for 3 months. My first month, I fasted from social media. And in that time, it was like the King Kylie era. It was like, if you didn't have Snapchat, you were nothing type of vibe. So it was extremely hard. Extremely hard. I think I was like a junior or senior in high school. And the next month, I fasted fast food, which is really hard because I worked at McDonald's. So when I would get my 30-minute break, I would have to go out, go to the nearest Walmart, run back, and only have like 5 to 10 minutes to eat my food. In my third month, I forgot what I gave up, but it was like 2 weeks into that 3-month fast, and I got this vivid dream. Like, this dream that was perfectly laid out, showed me everybody's heart, showed me my stepmom's heart, showed me like the leader's heart, everything. Like, he laid it all flat, like, this is what's going on. This is why you feel this way. This is what's going on. Spiritual stuff too. I saw this white van, and inside the white van was my dad, was a bunch of children wearing white. This guy came and knocked on the van door, opened up, and it was this guy that hadn't arrived at the church yet. He had arrived like 3 months after I had the dream. So I saw him coming even before he came to church.
Right.
And so that signified like purity, like they were innocent. And so there was just like, I saw people throwing shoes at me. I saw like the pastor like knowing everything but choosing not to act on it. Like, and at the end, God posed a question through one of my teachers. Like, he put my teacher to ask me this. He said, you have 2 choices, as he usually tends to do. That's very much God's character. He asks you questions and he gives you an option. And he said, what you have in front of you is a bargain. He's like, you have this beautiful gift that I have given you, and you have this beautiful gift that I have given you, but you're being weighed down by what people say. So you can choose to be here and stay here, and you'll let what people say affect you and not grow in fullness and completion to what I have called you. Or you can still choose to worship me in fullness, even if people talk bad about you. You go and you just worship me. You could choose whichever you want. It's like, but one is clearly more. It's gonna be more painful, but you're gonna please me, and it's gonna reap more joy in you long term. And so I woke up. There was 3 rainbows on my ceiling. Like, I was crying, eyes red. Like, I didn't even have time to breathe, and my eyes were like bloodshot. Like, if you know me, I don't cry. Like, I don't cry.
Yeah.
I woke up and there was like a light on my door. It looked like an angel, but I don't think angels have wings. I think it was like a seraphim, or I don't know what. I have pictures of it on my phone, and I every time I try to speak, it was just like, like I couldn't stop crying, and I didn't know why. I had this vivid dream, this encounter with the Lord. He was in my room. I was literally seeing like the Trinity, and I went into my stepmom's room, and I was like, this is what I dreamed, this is blah, blah, blah. And from then on, I remember going to church, hearing the same things, like the negative comments, but just like not caring. And I remember just like closing my eyes and just worshiping to like the fullest of my potential. Like, I will literally do like the like that naturally. Nobody taught me that. Like, they would tell me that I was crazy for doing that, and I didn't even know that was like a spiritual thing. It would just come out. And so I remember some brothers would come up to me. They'd be like, Mija, I love how you worship. Like, you could tell I don't think they meant this to hurt other people's feelings, but they said you can tell you're the only one that like does it with so much like spirituality and intention and emotion towards the Lord. And he's like, I don't know what you have, what gift you have, but like you could just tell like when you worship, like it's so genuine. And I think since that moment until now, I've had so many low points. So many low points that I honestly don't tell a lot of people, but so many moments where God has like crushed me and left. Like there was a point where I couldn't even trust my parents. There was a moment where I had to deal with a tough family situation, which I literally was living like hour by hour. Like I was with my kids like at work on my knees every hour, like any chance that I had, because it was just so bad. Like there was a moment I couldn't even trust my own emotions. Like I thought I was bipolar. When God had called me to move away, like so like where I've had to move out of an apartment and it's the last day and I have nowhere to go, and then that same day somebody calls me and they're like, hey, do you want to move in today? Like supernatural things. Or where I've had something I've had to pay for like $1,000 on, have to pay by the end of the day, and God's all like, oh, don't worry, I got you. Sends me an email where some case of a lawyer just gave me $1,000, like the exact amount.
Oh wow.
And it's like those things where you're just like, how can you not believe in a creator?
Yeah. And yeah, it's like God is never gonna fail you, but we just need to be receptive to his time and just leave it in his will. I feel like the most ashamed I've ever felt of myself in recent time was when my grandma passed away a few years ago. So she went in for surgery. She was gonna get a heart operation, and she passed away in surgery. Her arteries were clogged, and they couldn't save her. And it was for the first time in my life where I felt like I questioned God, and it felt like my faith kind of went into question for the first time. And I remember I didn't get the call that it happened, but I remember I had gotten home from school. My cousin called me and he's like, hey, can you meet us at my family's workplace? And he was like, can you just come here, we gotta talk. And at that point I knew she passed, and that's why they were calling me to go. And I had that moment of like, why God? Because you go from the day before I had FaceTimed her. She lives in Mexico, and so I had FaceTimed her, and like we prayed about her surgery, that everything was going to be okay. The doctors had told us that it was risky, but that they thought they were feeling very positive about the way that it'd go, right? And so that was the first moment in my life where I was like, why God? If you're a just God, why do you let these things happen to people who believe? And it, like, I instantly felt like I got slapped. Like it was just that conviction of, who are you to challenge my time? That's literally what it felt like. Like God was telling me, do you question my time in what, like, yeah. I felt like
that's like Job right there.
Yeah.
How he confronted Job.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because Job is one of my favorite books of the Bible, and it's one of the ones that like I instantly went to after all of this, and I was like, you're right, why am I questioning your time? And it's that I let my humanity and my frustration question God. And so after her passing, I prayed for forgiveness, and it's like I opened up my my phone, you're just going through messages and looking at photos. And a thing that my grandma would do is like she'd always, if she like tried to FaceTime me and I couldn't pick up, I was at school or whatever, she'd leave me voicemails. And I remember I saw a voicemail that she had left me that I had heard before, and I knew what it was, but I was afraid to listen to it again. I wanted to hear her voice, and I after I opened up my voicemail to hear her voice again, I was like, I don't want to play this. And it took me a while to come around and to listen to it again. And what that voicemail was the last voicemail she ever left me. I was at school and I couldn't pick up at the time, so she was like, "Oh, I just wanted to pray for you, and here's a prayer that God guides you throughout, like, that God guides you, and I'm gonna pray for you over the phone that we remember to listen to what His plan in our life is, and to let things come across in His time." And it was like I'm getting like emotional talking about
That's
it.
so crazy.
But
No, keep
it's
going.
like
It's really good.
it's like it was literally a prayer that she had left me for letting things happen in God's time. And here I was questioning His time. It was a really powerful moment, I think, for my faith. And it was that it made me realize like how big He is, and how His plan is a lot bigger than our own will, and that we can't understand why He does what He does, but at the same time we're not one to question it.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I feel like
I really like that. Like as you collect your thoughts, like going back to Job,
mm-hmm.
It talks about how like in this whole time that Job was going through that process of loss, because he had lost his children, lost his wealth, he had lost everything,
mm-hmm.
his cattle and everything. His wife had told him like, why don't you just curse your God?
Yeah.
And he had friends that were like kind of giving him bad advice, like
mm-hmm.
kind of making him like, are you sure like you didn't do anything to sin? Or
mm-hmm.
And at the very end, God confronts him in a whirlwind, and He asks him, were you there at the foundation of the earth? Were you there when I decided not to give ostriches wisdom? When an ostrich gives birth and goes through the labor pains, like I didn't give her enough wisdom to take care of her babies. Like, were you there when I gave the deer its awe and its wonder? Like stuff like that. And at the end, Job was like, he feels so small. And like my mom, my stepmom, I call her mom, she's like, when the Holy Spirit talks to you, it's so different to when God the Father talks to you. She's like, because the Holy Spirit comes in like a soft, gentle, peaceful whisper, and she's like, everything's gonna be okay. Like, yeah, you're gonna be great when you get older. And versus God the Father, because he's like all power, all reigning, all like, when you're before the Father, you feel so small.
Right. Yeah.
Like the Father comes in and He like redirects you. He's like, that's not what I called you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or who are you to question my authority? Mm-hmm. And I feel like how you were just saying, like, yes, He is a loving Father, but even like when He met you there and like He gently slapped you in the face.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's such a great way to like end the pod, where all of this is in His timing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And this imposter syndrome that we've been just like circulating around in the way that God reveals Himself as like an African American woman and all this stuff, like, and it's all for Him, from Him, like, all is to say, all in His timing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to just like talk a little bit more about how like your grandmother's loss has helped you to get closer to God.
Yeah, I think it's kind of reminded me to, she was another like prayer warrior in my life. She was like a second mom to me. Like I literally called her Mami Nena, and my grandpa Papi Martin. And I just remember like my grandpa, when I was little, every night before going to bed, he'd be there with his giant text Bible, 'cause, and they'd just be praying, and I just remember like my grandpa would be like, "Oh, ahorita me duermo, Elena," like, tengo que leer la Biblia, and my grandma, she'd always be the one kind of motivating me, when if like I received an award at church or I got a new position at church, she was like my cheerleader of growing my faith, and I remember she just like always wanted to see me grow spiritually. So it's like after this whole debacle of coming to realize like, okay, I'm not one to question God, and at the end of the day she's in a much better place, right? Like, it kind of strengthened my faith of questioning, is God really there if he let this happen, and going back to God is there, and things happen because it's in his timing, and it it's a long way to say that it gave me the confirmation that I needed, that God is always listening, and he's always going to do things when it's his time and not our timing. And as much as we'd like to have control over the situations, it's always going to be his will, not ours.
I like that. Yeah. I think it's such a good way to end this. So good. I'm gonna pray for you after, when we finish the pod, like we close it down, because I do have to go pee. Yeah. That's like a running joke.
Yeah, it's been like a running joke since last week.
I have to pee.
Yeah.
I was telling him, like, my professor has called me out on that, where like anytime I'm in a public setting, I like will stop everything. I'm like, guys, I'll be right back. I have to go pee. Mm-hmm. When we hung out last week, we were like in the middle of a conversation, and I just looked at him and I was like, I have to pee. We were like, okay, the moment that I say that, the pod's over. Yeah. But yes, so I think the main three topics we talked about today were everything in God's timing, how like, well, obviously our testimonies, and how like the loss of someone of a family member, someone we love, actually draws us closer to God, as he meets us in those like tough questions that he doesn't really truly have to answer us, but he's so graceful to. And the other big one was imposter syndrome, which I think a lot of people.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress.
Same. So I'm gonna re-listen to this pod whenever I feel
like
I'm going through that. I'm like, hey, I spoke those words, so I have to believe them. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. This was Living for Christ podcast, and this is Kevin Haley. I'm gonna put his Instagram and photography and everything down below. Like and subscribe. And do you have anything you want to say? Or
no, I think it was a lot more emotional at the end than I thought it would be, but I had fun.
Yeah, me too. I'm curious to see how long this is.
I am too. It was a good yap session.
I know, we yapped a lot before, but I hope you guys let's show them the tat.
The henna.
The henna, it only lasts like 2 weeks max.
Yeah.
I have one too right here. It says Yahweh, it's like fading. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. We love you guys, and so excited to have more future guests. Maybe even Kevin will join us in a future episode if you guys are dying to see him again.
Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.